Hello, Grace Community Church. We are on February 1st reading, which means we've made it through a whole month of our cover-to-cover series. Now, if you've been here for a whole month, you should give yourself a pat on the back. You did it. But if you haven't, that's okay. We got several more months to go. Just try to make it through this month. But if you can't, pick up the Bible as many days as you can, because as a church, we're wanting to get to know the Word more. We're trying to get to know what God has said to us through history and can say to us right now. So today, in February 1st, we're looking at Exodus 1, and we're going to Exodus 4, verse 17. We also have a few verses in 1 Chronicles. Well, in this section, we see a telescoping of history. There's about a couple hundred years between Genesis, the end of Genesis, and the beginning of this book. And it says Joseph's died, everyone's died, even the kings who knew about Joseph and knew about what he had done have died, and a new king has risen up, and he sees that the Hebrews, the Israelites, have grown numerically, and they are exceedingly vast people, and he's afraid of them, so he puts them into slavery. And so this is what he says. This is what it says in verse 13 and 14. And in other versions, this is a little bit maybe more emphasized, but we can still get the gist here. So the Egyptians worked the people of Israel without mercy. They made their lives bitter, forcing them to mix mortar and make bricks and do all the work in the fields. They were ruthless in all their demands. Now this sets up a key motif for the rest of the book, that the Egyptians forced them to work day after day after day. But God is not the same, that he provides rest for them. And he actually commands them, when he gives them the 10 Commandments, he says, you are to honor the Sabbath and keep it holy. It is a holy day of rest. You don't work every day. You trust in the Lord to provide for your needs. And so that is a key theme throughout the rest of this book. Well, the Pharaoh has forced them into labor, but that has not stopped them from multiplying. So he says to the Hebrew midwives, make sure that you kill all the sons that are born. And then they go and they fear the Lord, and they don't do it. And Pharaoh says, why haven't you done this? And they say, well, they're too vigorous. They give birth before we even get there. And that is probably true, because there's only 2 midwives, it says, and so they probably couldn't get to every person who's in birth pangs at that time because of the numerous amount of Hebrews or Israelites. Well, then the Egyptian Pharaoh goes to even more drastic measures, and he orders all his people to throw every newborn boy, Hebrew boy, into the Nile River. He did this so that he could try to thwart the Hebrews' growth, but he didn't know that God had chosen the Israelites, and he had promised them deliverance and promised to be their God. And so Moses is born, and he is put in a basket that has waterproof with tar and pitch. And what's interesting is that word basket actually is the same word for ark. And this is the only place in the rest of the Bible where the ark is mentioned, the rest of the Old Testament, I guess. So Genesis 7, Genesis 6 talks about the ark. Genesis 9 talks about the ark. And guess what else? Exodus 2 has a reference to an ark. Now this tells us that God has delivered his people from the flood. He's going to deliver his people again through Moses. So then Moses becomes another telescoping of history. Moses does eventually have an education in Egypt, but he decides he wants to identify more with his people. And then he kills an Egyptian who's abusing an Israelite. Well, people find out, and he runs. And the first Exodus happens. Moses escapes from Egypt, and he becomes a shepherd. And he is he's fruitful, he has a wife, and he cares for this sheep. And then Moses in chapter 3 encounters this burning bush. So God, it says in verse 2, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the middle of the bush. And Moses stared in amazement. Though the bush was engulfed in flames, it didn't burn up. And then he said, I must go see what's going on. And the Lord saw him coming closer. He said, Moses, Moses. He calls him by name. And he says this, do not come any closer. Take off your sandals, for you are standing on holy ground. I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Now, it says here that Moses, when he heard this, he covered his eyes. He was afraid to look at God. Now, this is important because sometimes we can read this and we can be like, wow, that's interesting. Wow, that's very cool. I heard a quote recently that helped me put this into a better perspective. Sometimes when we look at these passages where we see God working mightily and working in mysterious ways, we can try to look at it, and this quote said, take photographs and discuss this while not recognizing the amazing thing that is happening here. God is revealing himself to Moses and is calling him by name, and it is holy. And wherever God is holy ground. And we can have that as a focus and say, okay, God is in me, or at least he should be. And if he is in me, wherever I go is holy ground. So that should mean something to us, that we need to be careful what we're doing and how we're doing it when we're on holy ground. Well, God calls Moses and says, you need to go deliver my people, Israel. And Moses makes up every excuse he possibly could. But in the middle of it, he asks God, what's your name that I can share with them? And God says, I am who I am. And this is my eternal name. You can tell them forever that my name is I am who I am. Now this indicates that God is over and above. He is not created, and he is eternal God. And this is an important thing that we can hold on to. That God is over and above everything we experience, every struggle we have. He is above it all. And he can deliver us as he delivered Israel through the ark of Noah, through the ark of Moses, and ultimately through the ark of Jesus. He has lifted us up from the earth to himself. And that is what we can hold on to. God bless you.